the November Entuity ENMA Tech Talk. This will be our last session for 2013. We hope that you're finding these sessions useful. As a reminder, all the Tech Talks are available via video on the resources page at entuity.com. This is the third and final in the series of Tech Talks devoted to the new Event Management System, which was announced in Entuity 13.5 and its counterpart ENMA 10.5. The first session covered a discussion of the original event handling system and how that compares to the new one, the functionality that you get out of the box without any configuration at all, a case study on looking at port flapping and how that's handled, enabling event rules that we provide but they're disabled by default, and then an introduction into the whole concept of event aggression. And finally, we wrapped up with discussion of integration, particularly the integration into BMC's BPPM. There was a little demo of that. In the second session, we looked at adding an extra attribute to an event and an incident, creating event processing rules, and setting some device priorities. Today, we will be looking at Syslog events, how this data is helpful in managing a network. And we're going to do that in a couple of different ways. I'm John Diamond, and I'm a Principal Solutions Architect at Entuity, and also with me today is my colleague Pete Barnes, who is a Field System Engineer, and we will be your hosts for the next 30 minutes or so. So, with all the preliminaries complete, let's begin our session. I want to just take a minute or two to give you a quick overview refresher on what the event management system is all about. Basically, there are two important concepts that you need to understand to begin with. The first is the concept of an event, and the second is the concept of an incident. Now, incidents are new in the 13.5 release of Entuity. It was introduced with the event management system, and they take events, which we've had all along. An event basically tell you that something has happened, when it happened, what it happened to, what it was, some details on it. So there's a new concept called an incident, which tells you right now whether or not you've got a condition that is lingering. So, for example, if you had a threshold exceeded, such as a high utilization threshold, and that is still the case, there would have been an event generated to indicate that when the threshold was crossed, that would have opened an incident. The incident would have stayed open until that threshold was then reversed by the value coming down below the threshold. That would have generated a clearing event, and that would have cleared out the incident. Now, incident processing can be more sophisticated than that, but that's the general concept. Now, in the middle of all of this, we've got a new concept of very flexible rules processing for events. And they allow you to take the raw events that are happening. There are many hundreds of different types of events that can happen within the system. And they will be processed by a set of rules that you can configure, and that controls the generation of new events, if necessary, the reformatting of events, the modification of attributes within the event, then their storage in the database, the optional forwarding out to third-party products, and then an optional extra bit of processing that you can do after that, again, with the concept of rules. Only after the events come out of that system do they then get processed into incidents. So that's a quick overview of what's happening. How can we make use of that in the area of Syslog handling? That's the crux of what we're going to be looking at today. So Pete, do you want to kick off with our examples?
Thanks, JD, and hello, everyone. Welcome. And what I'd like to do today is first set the scene. So if I'm looking at my network management system, I see that I've got the capability to collect Syslog events. These can be configured on your network devices, and they can be collected and viewed within the Entuity events window. lot of cases, the Syslog events that I'm seeing are really informational, but there's a number of them that I know I want to pick out and I want to highlight. So what we're going to do today is pick a couple of Syslog events, and we're going to show you how you can reformat them, and we can make it so that they're highlighted within the system. So I actually, to be honest, both of the examples that I'm going to show you today are actually inspired by a couple of our customers. So these are real-world examples that were inspired out in the field. The first one that we're going to do is to look at the case of a network loop. Now you can actually see it here in the syslog warning that I've got. I've actually got a host flapping condition. So I've actually got a looping condition between two ports on a given device. So I've got a MAC address that is flapping between two individual ports. So what I want to do with that today is identify this and make it so that it'll highlight and stand out in my event system. And we're going to do this in a couple steps. The first step that we're going to do is first take the syslog warning itself and create a brand new event. And we're going to highlight that event based on the event name, and then eventually we're going to take the contents of the details field here and add it into that new event. So within the event management system, the first thing that I want to be able to do is create a brand new event. So I'm going to hit the events menu here, and I'm going to go into the add button. The add button is going to allow me to create an event, and you'll see that I've also got the capability for creating a clearing event and automatically creating a brand new incident. So let's start here. Let's create a new event. We're going to call this network loop. And we're going to change this from an informational event and just call this, it's going to be a minor event. This will be a level 2 event. Let's put on a reasonable description. And note that because this is a syslog event, it's not one that's going to have a clearing event. There isn't a corresponding syslog that's going to clear this condition out. And I see up here too, I've got a typo. There we go, we'll fix that. In the next section, you can see that I can add an incident definition. So I'm going to select this, and I'm actually going to use the same name. We're going to create an incident along with the event. And let's use the same description. Now the last two fields in this talk about the age out and the expiration of the incident. And I'll explain a little bit about what these are, but initially, let's set these out so the age out is set at 5 minutes. And the expiration is set out at, so let's just set it at 1 hour. Now the age out condition is effective because if I see an event that generates this incident, and I don't see another one for 5 minutes, it's going to close this event, or close the incident. So in the incident viewer, it's going to go away from the viewer and it's going to go into a closed condition. The expiration is really helpful because if for some reason that event is lingering on the network, it just hasn't repeated itself in 5 minutes, but comes back, say, 10 minutes or 20 minutes later, the incident itself is still in the system and can be updated by this new event. So within the expiration period, if I do see this syslog message come into the system, it's going to reopen and update the incident that was originally created. After an hour, though, if nothing has happened, the incident itself will be closed, and it'll actually expire itself. So now that I've created this custom event, I'm going to hit OK here. And one note that I want to make is because I'm going to be creating some rules that use this new network loop event, I first have to deploy it, because in order to use it in a rule definition, it has to exist in the system. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to save my changes, and I'm going to deploy. I'm going to put a suitable name. We created a new event, and we called it network loop. So let's hit OK. We're now deploying this new configuration. If I go back into the configuration now and I take a look at the events, you'll see that I've actually can see the new network loop. Now, there's a couple ways that I can find that new event, because there's a lot of events that are in the system. I can either scroll down till I see the name and it starts with an N. Or if I want to see all of my custom events, all I have to do is select and sort on the category, and the custom types are going to show up at the top. So you see that I've got a network loop event and a description, and it's tied to a brand new instance. And right now, there are no rules associated with it. Let's go to the next step. Next step is creating a rule. In the rules manual, you'll see that we have both pre and post storage rules. Because I want to parse out that syslog message as it comes into the system before it actually gets saved into the events database, I'm going to create a new rule in the pre-storage area. Now, there's a number of them that come with your implementation, and these are out-of-the-box initial filtering, suppressions, flapping, and N of M rule types. Because I'm working with syslog, none of these really fit. So I'm going to create a brand new processing stage down here. I'm going to select Add Processing Stage, and we're going to create a brand new name. Let's call this Syslog Rules. And this is actually going to have a description. Let's just call this Rules for Syslog Handling. We're going to process all the rules, and there's no conditions because whatever rules we put in this category set, we want to actually process all of them and handle them uniquely. So I'm just going to press OK here, and you see that I've got a brand new folder set underneath the pre-storage container. So let's create a brand new rule here. So I'm going to select Syslog Rule. The rule that we're going to add is a network loop detection rule. So I'm actually going to pick a name. The type is generic because it's not using any of the existing types right here. So I'm going to pick a generic type. I'm going to add in a name, network loop detection, and this rule is really in place to generate a brand new event based on a repeated regex match of that syslog message. So let's just put in some descriptive information here because we're looking at the host flapping string within that syslog, and that's what we're going to base the rule on. So we're going to set our condition, and we're going to have a number of conditions here, and we're going to say all the tests that we're going to set have to be successful in order to move forward. And let's look at creating our tests next. Remember that when we first saw that event, it came in as a syslog warning. So the first test that we want to add is looking at the type of event. So I'm going to look at the event type test, and I'm going to add a set of events that would actually match this. And since I know this is a syslog warning, I can actually go in and add specifically that syslog warning message. So we'll scroll down to the syslog and look at syslog warning. Now, I can press OK here, and you see that I've got syslog warning in here as my event type. Now, if I wasn't sure what syslog level this might come in as, I can actually add in syslog critical, syslog informational, any of the syslog types. And this test will pass as long as one of those types is found in the name of the event. So I'm going to hit OK here, and that's my first test. My second test is the really interesting one because what I want to do is I want to look at the host flapping string within the syslog message. And I want to identify if it's got host flapping in it, I'm going to rename this event. So the first thing that I want to do is look at the event attribute. I'm going to look at a specific attribute, and I'm going to be able to do some comparison. In my case, I'm actually going to use a regex string. The attribute that I'm going to look at is the reason field. The reason attribute is equivalent to the details column in the event viewer. That's something that's important to note. Anytime you're working with the reason attribute here, that will be equivalent to the details column. In my case, I want to take a look at a matches qualifier. So the operation that I want to choose is matches, and that allows me to set up a regex comparison. So let's copy in the regex that we want to use, and we're going to use host flapping. So dot star host flapping dot star. Anything within the reason field, that that matches this string type is actually going to give me a positive test. That's all I need to do. So we're going to hit OK here, and I've got all the tests set up the way that I want to. Now my next step is to look at what I want to do with that, Syslog event once I've actually passed all the tests. So I want to do a set of actions. What I'd like to end up with is a brand new event. So I've created the network loop event, and we're going to actually rename the Syslog event into that network loop condition, or that new network loop event. So what I want to do here is I'm going to eventually want to set the type. Now in order to use the proper reason field in that information and the proper severity, there's a couple things that I have to do first. So there's two actions that are preliminary to actually setting the type. The first one is to effectively clear out the name of the event. So I'm going to set an attribute. The attribute that I'm going to set is the name, and I'm going to set that name just to be empty. Hit OK. The second action that I need to take is reset the attribute for the severity. So the severity I want to set back to basically a null entry to clear it out, and the value for that is going to be 0. So I'm setting the severity here to 0. The final action that I want to take is to actually add and set the event type. So the set event type allows me to pick that new custom event that we created just a couple minutes ago. So I'm going to set it as a network loop. That's all I need to do. What this will do is take that syslog warning in, compare it to look for host flapping. If that matches, what I'm going to see in the events viewer is a brand new event. That makes it very easy for me to highlight. Let's save and deploy this. Put a description on the project and hit OK. So let's go take a look at some of our open events. And you can see the original syslog warning events. And let's generate a brand new event and see what it looks like. It'll take just a couple seconds to propagate to the system after I generated it. But what we'll look for is a brand new name and the contents of the reason field, which is part of the original syslog payload. So that's what we're seeing. So this is working exactly the way that we want to. Now we're going to take this another step, because in that repetitive condition, I wouldn't consider it a flapping port, but it is a flapping condition where that syslog message and that MAC address is flapping between two existing ports. That type of syslog message is going to come up repeatedly. So what I want to do is actually create a condition that says I want to maintain the original syslog warning, but in a case where this repeats itself more than, say, twice over 10 seconds, I want to actually use the network loop condition, the network loop event in that case. So I'm going to make some modifications actually to the rule that we just created. Let's go in and edit our network loop detection. And down here, you'll notice that we use the generic type. What I want to do is I want to look at a different type. I want to do an event set detection, because I'm going to look for multiple occurrences of this over a period of time, and based on that test, I'm actually going to do this action. So we're going to change the type. This is going to give me a detection capability with these same tests, and then I'm going to reset my actions. So in my case, the detection that I'm going to look for is the syslog warning message. And I'm going to look for 2 occurrences of that message over the course of 10 seconds. That's my detection. Now let's reset all of the actions that we had initially done. So first I'm going to set the attribute to clear out the name. Next one is to reset the severity. So I'm going to set the severity attribute here. the final one will be to set the event type. And again, setting the event type to network loop. That should do it. Scroll this up a bit. Hit OK, and let's deploy this project. So we just updated our new rule, so we'll change this to something that's more descriptive, and hit OK. And let's generate another test. Now I'm actually going to generate two syslog messages. I'll give a couple seconds between them. The first syslog message will come in as a syslog warning, because I want to maintain that initial one. I want to generate the network loop event because I'm actually seeing the second one in that time period. So there's my first one, and now I should see the second one coming into the system. And there's my second one, which is now generated as a network loop condition. So you could easily create a filter that is looking specifically for these events and not have to see all the individual syslog warning events that come in. So you'll know that this is a special condition because you're looking at a specific flapping condition between two ports. So that's our first example. Let's take a look at another example. And this is a case where we want to look at we want to monitor configuration changes. Again, this came from one of our customers, and in the case we want to actually look at the syslog message that is telling me that I'm going into enable mode on a device. So the message that I'm looking at, if I scroll down here, is actually the sys5 config to say that I've configured from console, and it's actually telling me the username. User Pete is the person who actually went into enable mode on this. What I want to do is I want to take this syslog notice, I want to generate a brand new event, and I'm going to take it a step further because I want to modify the contents of the details column. And again, that's the reason attribute. So the first thing we're going to do is go back in and create a brand new event. Go down here and hit the add button. And the event that we're going to create is called during device config mode. I'm cut and pasting between an editor here. So entering device config mode, I'm going to change this to be a little bit more important. We'll make this major. And we'll put a description on it that says a user has just entered config mode. Because it's syslog, again, I don't need a clearing event, but because I want to create an incident, we'll select that and use the same name and same description for that incident. Let's set the age out. We'll set this to 5 minutes. And we'll set the expiration to 1 hour, similar to what we did previously. Hit OK, and again, because I'm going to use this new event, I want to actually deploy it before I put it into a rule. So let's save and deploy this. Let's create, we just created a new config event. Hit OK. Now, this has just updated the system. Again, let's go take a look at all my custom events, and you see that I've got a severity 3 entering device config mode event right here. So this is, again, the one that we're going to use in the rules. Let's go to the next step then. Within the rule, the thing that I want to look for is a portion of the payload of the syslog message. So I'm going to look for sys5 config, and I'm going to use regex expression again to do that. So let's go back in and go into my rules. Because this is one of my existing syslog rules, I'm going to add it into my syslog rule container, and let's just add a brand new rule. Now, the rule that we're going to use is called device change rule. The type of rule is going to be generic, and let's put a description on it. There's going to be a number of tests again, so all the tests must succeed. And again, the first test that we're going to want to look at is the type of rule. So we're going to, or the type of event. So it's an event type test. And the event that we're going to look for is a syslog notice. So we'll select that right here, hit OK. The second test is looking at the attribute within the syslog that is the reason field again, and we're going to do a regex match on that, similar to what we did with our previous example. So let's hit OK here, go in and add a brand new test. The test that we're going to want to look for is looking at a specific attribute. The attribute that we're going to want to compare to is the reason field, and we're going to actually use regex, so we want the matches operation. So we've created the test that's looking for the syslog notice, and we're going to hit OK to add this test in. The second test, again, is the interesting one because I want to look at a regex comparison for this part of the string. So I'm looking for that in the syslog message, and I'm going to create a test that's looking for the attribute, the reason attribute, because I'm looking for the payload of the syslog, and I'm going to do a matches operation that allows me to use a regex comparison. So I'm going to do dot star, and that's the part of the string that I care about, and dot star at the end to finish my regex. I'm going to hit OK, and those are the tests that I'm really interested in having succeed in order for me to detect this new and generate this brand new event. So the actions that I want to do, the first action again would be to use my new custom event. So again, I've got two preparation steps that I need to do. The first one is to reset the attribute for the name. So I'm going to reset that to empty. And I'm going to reset the attribute for the severity. So let's go down to severity, and we're going to reset that to 0. The third action step is to actually set up and use that brand new event. And we'll actually generate a brand new event type that is talking about configuration mode. Now, let's see what that looks like. Because we're going to want to take this a step further, but I want to show this step as it is right now. So let's hit OK, and let's generate a brand new project. So now that we've created the brand new event that's talking about the fact that I've got a user that's entering config mode, let's create a rule for that. So again, because this is part of the syslog rule set that we want to do, we're going to add the new rule directly into this container. So let's select the syslog rule and hit the add rule button. The first thing that we want to do is actually create the rule name. And this, let's use device change rule as the name for this one. We'll find a description. What this rule is going to do is look at the syslog 5 config string right here and do a regex match. So this is similar to what we did before, but we're actually going to take it a step further after we generate our brand new event. So the name of the event is here, or the name of the rule is here. The conditions, again, I've got multiple conditions that I want to meet, so they all have to succeed. And the test, the first test that I'm going to look at is, again, looking at the event type. I know this comes in as a syslog notice, so we're going to scroll down to the syslog notice and select that. Hit OK, and that's our first test. The second test is the one where we're going to take we're going to look for the sys5 config and put it into a regex expression. So again, in order to do that, I'm going to do regex over a specific attribute. So this is going to be an event attribute test. I'm going to look at the reason field, and I'm going to do the matches operation. The regex expression is going to be dot star, and I'm looking for everything with that sysconfig 5. So let me cut and paste that. And a dot star at the end. So I'm looking for that string within that field. That should be a good test. We'll hit OK. That's the last test that we need to have checked out. So the actions that I'm going to do are going to be similar to what we did previously, as an initial step. I'm going to eventually want to have a brand new event based on this pattern test. So the first action I'm going to use is, again, to set the attribute, because I want to clear the name of the event out. I want to set it to empty. Hit OK. one, again, is to set the attribute for severity. Set that to 0. And the third one is going to be to set the actual event type. So let's set the event type. We'll go down to the ease, and we'll go to, scroll up a bit. There we go. Entering device config mode. That's the brand new event that we created. What this will do is take that syslog and generate a brand new event called entering device config mode. So let's hit OK, and let's deploy this as a project. So we actually created a new config rule. And hit OK. So we'll give this a couple minutes or a couple seconds to propagate into the system, and let's generate a test. So let's send a syslog. And what you should see then is a brand new event name, and you should see the original details that came in the syslog message. Again, this is what was in the reason attribute. So there's entering device config mode. It's got the correct severity as a severity 3, and it's got the original details. I want to take this a step further, because in a lot of syslog messages, there can be a lot of details, and there can be information that might roll off the edge of the screen, or it might be something that I don't really care about. What I want to do on this example is to highlight the username. So user Pete is the username that went into config. So I actually want to modify the details for this. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's go back into my rule. I can use the same rule that we set up. So I'm going to go into the device change rule, go to edit, and let's go down into the action steps. Now, so far, I'm generating a brand new event. I want to take this a step further. And what I want to do is add a series of rules that are looking at the reason field and pulling out the username. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to actually show how to do this in steps, and then I'm going to actually do this in one single step. But you can actually do this in multiple steps. So I'm going to go under the type, and I'm going to set the attribute. The attribute that I'm going to set is going to be the reason attribute. And I'm going to use the reason.replaceAll command. So I'm going to replace all in the existing reason contents. And what I'm going to replace it by, I'm going to look for a pattern match. So again, I've got a dot star and a by space. So if you look at the original event, and if I scroll this window over just a bit, you can see that everything before the by and space, I could actually delete, because what I want to get at is user Pete. So I've got an expression where I'm going to replace everything that goes up to the by space with an empty set. So once I do that, what you'd see is at the beginning of the details, you would see user Pete, and then on BTY2 and the rest of the details. I'm going to take that another step further, and we're going to actually clean off everything after the username. So this would be one step that you could do. The next step would then do a reason replace all with a space, dot star, and replace it with an empty string. So what it's going to do is, since the first character is the username, it's going to take the blank after the username and everything after it and create an empty string. The third step that I would want to do, because what I've got now is a details field that only shows me the username. But I'd like to add some text onto this. So the third step that I would take is to add some text. And you can do that by putting whatever text you'd like to have in quotes. So I'm going to do config enable by, and then I'm going to add the current value of that reason field. Now I could do this in 3 actions, each with their own set attribute. But I could actually put this all together, and I'm going to actually do this in one step. And let me show you what that looks like. So we'll replace this value with a new one. So what we're going to do here is add config enabled by. Note that I'm doing my first reason.replace all, so I'm actually taking the first part of the string off to expose the username, and then I'm looking for everything after the username and removing it as well. So I can take those 3 steps and put them into one. So I'm going to hit OK here. And that's actually the final action that I need to do. So let's deploy this and see what it looks like. I didn't create a new rule. I did update it though, so let's update this. And we'll go into the events and let's generate an event. Give it a few seconds to come into the system. And what I should see is my brand new string that I created that says config by and then user Pete as the username. Or config enabled, I'm sorry. So that worked successfully. So 2 examples, both using regex, where you can take a lot of syslog messages and pull out the pieces of syslog messages that you really care about. Take that information, generate brand new events, and then those events can be processed. I think that covers it. JD, is there anything that we should add?
I think it's fantastic, Peter. These really are useful real-world examples, and what you've shown there is a very efficient way of manipulating information that the devices are giving you and massaging it to get to the event. And therefore, the incidents that they generate containing exactly what you want it to. At the end of the day, what you're doing is you're tuning the system to fit the workflow requirements of a particular organization. And that's the beauty of the event management system. It allows you that malleability on the rule set to do that customization. One thing I would note, as Peter's been doing at each step of the way here, he's been deploying the changes and then evaluating the result. It goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you forget to deploy the changes, there will be no effect on the system. So those changes won't take effect. Don't forget to deploy the changes. So that said, to wrap up, as it's customary, we will send you a summary of today's Tech Talk in a video format for your future use. If you've got any further questions or have any suggestions for Tech Talks in 2014, please don't hesitate to contact us. And there's a special email address for this. It's tech.talks@entuity.com. And to let you know, we're putting the final touches to Entuity 14, the next release. It's going to be announced in early December. Keep an eye out for the announcement details in your mailbox. And we think that Entuity 14, which is also going to be known as ENMA 14, will be extremely helpful to you. I can't spill the beans on the details, but I'm confident you'll